You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly.
Welcome to the Village of Wapner Falls second monthly meeting. The Mayor and the Board of Trustees. Today is Wednesday, September 27th. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Mayor Huber.
present.
Trustee Nicholas. Absent. Trustee Telesak. Absent. Trustee Nesnick.
Here.
Trustee Williams.
Here.
Trustee Ruffin.
Absent.
Absent. Trustee Smith. Absent. Mayor, we do not. Attorney Linders.
Here, sorry.
Attorney Youngworth. Mayor, we do not have a quorum at the moment.
All right.
We could begin with the PowerPoint.
Let's do that then.
Okay,
You're up, Tom.
I'm up. Okay, good.
If we don't have a quorum, we can't,
Everyone?
Yeah,
we can't, yeah, but we can't hold, I mean, this is part of the agenda, right?
Yes, I am.
So, we really can't, you can't open them, you can't continue the meeting without a quorum. You have to wait for Trustee Ruffin before you can commence any business.
Oh,
I would wait. He said he was gonna, he's on his way. Did you vote him?
We'll restart with,
okay, that's good.
You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly.
Welcome to the Village of Wapner's Fall second monthly meeting of the Mayor and Board of Trustees. Today is Wednesday, September 27th. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Mayor Huber,
Present.
Trustee Nicholas,
Here.
Trustee Tilisak, absent. Trustee Nesnick,
Here.
Trustee Williams,
Here.
Trustee Ruffin, absent. Trustee Smith, Village Attorney Lindars,
Here.
Attorney Youngworth. Authorization to pay bills as per approved warrants.
I'll make that motion.
And I have a second.
I'll second.
Who's
Mayor,
that?
We just want to jump into an executive session for a few minutes. If I get a motion.
I'll make a motion that we go to executive session.
Is there a second?
For what purpose is this?
James.
Consult with the lawyer
Regarding
regarding a personnel issue.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried.
Forget about it.
The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand.
You know who's living? This building, the one his furnace was going like a parade. And God knows it was, but
The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. The board has entered executive session. Please stand by. The meeting will resume when they return. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly.
Can I have a motion to return to the regular session?
I'll make that motion.
Second? Mike, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Next on the agenda is presentation by planning.
John, I need to make a motion, if that's all right with you.
Fine with me.
All right. The motion is to approve personnel council to draft a resolution pursuant to terms discussed in executive session.
Labor Council.
Labor council, excuse me.
Motion to approve, it's gonna be a motion to approve Labor Council to draft the appropriate documentation pursuant to a personnel issue as discussed in executive session.
You got a motion?
I'll make that motion.
For a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Presentation by planning board chairperson Tom Morris.
Really? This time?
You got it. It's all you, Tom.
It's all you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time tonight, for hearing me. Hopefully everybody's got a copy of what I'm about to go through. What I'm going to try to do is go through the 5 different areas that I've been volunteering my time to do, and just let everybody know what's going on in those areas. At any point it gets too detailed or too boring, just let me know, I'll move on. If you want, at any point in time, just stop me and answer some questions. So there's 5 areas for tonight that I'm going to talk about. I've been working with vehicle fleet. We have a lot of vehicles that we use, a lot of the police cars, the highway department, etc. And then behind that is the buildings and facilities. And the other is smaller, which are commuting and streetlights. Now, you'll notice that solid waste facility is crossed off. The reason for that is we can't get the data for that. The way Royal handles their calculations on processing solid waste is by the town. So I can get the entire town of Wappingers or the entire town of Poughkeepsie, but they do not cut out what is the village's portion. So that would be artificially inflated, so I've elected to take that off the list until we can find a way to actually break out the solid waste. Okay, this is a little hard to read. It's a little more to an eye chart. But what you'll see is on the top line, building facilities, this little blue, the smaller blue line on the top is the electric that's used by the buildings, and the bottom line is the gas, the natural gas. Over here, the fleet, as you can see, diesel and ethanol are very small, but plain old gasoline is a very big contributor. Solid waste I just talked about. Employee commute, you can see that bar there, and I'll tell you how I calculated that in a few moments here. Streetlights, and then water and wastewater. You look down here, you can't really see it from there, but you can see it in the package they can take. The top one is tri-municipal. Tri-municipal uses the lion's share of all the energy to process. So we had some challenges in trying to pull this data together. Not all 2019 data was available. The solid waste records I mentioned, we need to research things to get some of the data. As far as employee commute, we had to be a little creative there. What we ended up doing was finding out what address, not a person's name or anything, we had to keep it generic, what address that they lived at, what department did they work in, and then just do the math. How many miles did they travel each way, each day? And that's what we came up with that commute information. So the next steps are to build a business as usual forecast, which I've already done a draft of. And what it really is the chart you saw before put into a more formalized report. And then the next part that we're starting, and actually we have a target in a couple of weeks here, is to pull together some type of plan to see if we can address some of the 3 high items. Is there something that we can do as a municipality to help in the water and wastewater, in the vehicles, and in the buildings and facilities? So we have a tool called ClearPath, and that tool will allow us to make changes in the tool, and it'll model what type of a response that will have on the overall effect of greenhouse gases. So this way here we can try different things in the computer, and from that we can decide whether or not we want to proceed down that path or another. Okay. Any questions on climate update? Okay. If not, we're going to move into the electric vehicle charging stations. There's actually 3 goals here for the charging stations. The one is, as we all know, sooner or later there's going to be more electric vehicles, and it'd be really nice if we had a place for people to come and charge. Second of all, it would also encourage people to come to the village. They can come, plug their car on the charger, and then use some of the restaurants and shops, etc., as they walk around. And the big one to me is zero cost to the village, because we'll actually be, these chargers are not free to the users. The users will actually plug in there, they'll have an account, they'll get billed, and then the proceeds from that will get transferred to the village. So it covers the cost of the devices. We did receive a municipal grant for $9,700, $9,790, excuse me, back in the April timeframe. And unfortunately, as of this week, the comptroller still hasn't released any of the funds. The first location that we're looking at putting it in is in the southwest corner of the Mill Street Municipal Lot. You'll see, if you're familiar with the lot, There's a little 4-car section here. 2 of those are ADA, and the other 2 are the ones that I have my eye on to go right there, so they can use here. And the key point about you doing it right next to the ADA, the cables are long enough, so in ADA, the car on the left in the ADA spot will also be able to utilize the charger. And we have a couple of work items. Obviously, the one in red there is still kind of holding everything up. We have the grant, but we don't have the money yet. So as soon as we do, we'll be able to open the floodgates. There is a covenant. A lot of people might not know this, but those parking spaces on the south side, the village signed a covenant many years ago saying that all those spots are for the people in the building right there, with the original owners of the building. So we need to proceed with changing the covenant to move those spots to 2 other spaces. So I had put a request in a while ago, and just crossing my fingers that we can keep moving that forward. Yes, go ahead.
You're saying it's not costed anything for charging stations?
Well, the hardware within the initial couple of years will be paid for by the grant. Then, as the users are using it, what will happen is they'll be billed for a kilowatt of energy, just like Central Hudson does. But instead of charging just what Central Hudson does, we'll be charging a little convenience adder on top of that. And that convenience adder will actually go to continue maintenance and keeping the chargers up and running. So that the bottom line is, I do not want village taxpayers paying for a charger. I want the people who are going to use it to pay for the charger. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that's I requested a village law, because you see the little sign up in the corner there. We don't want just anybody parking in these spots, because if they do, then they're going to ice out anybody who wants to use it for a charger. I've already received an insurance quote, an electrician's quote, the trench signage and pavement markings quote. The highway department's going to give us some assistance there. But with all those quotes and the companies that I'm looking at, they all fall within the grant amount, which is where I want to be with a little bit of buffer. Permits and inspections, not a problem. We'll take care of them as soon as I get the grant. And then vendor selection. Let me just tell you a little bit about who we're looking at. We started off with 14 different vendors. We narrowed it down to these 4. There's a company called Flow, EV Box, Juice Bar, and then Lexington Energy Group. And they all have really good offerings. The criteria that I used to get down to these 4 are listed here. Cost. Because one thing you probably don't see on here, if you're familiar with any kind of chargers, the one that you see most prevalently around is called ChargePoint. Unfortunately, ChargePoint is extremely expensive. So we have chosen that, I've taken that right off the list. It's expensive to buy, and it's expensive to maintain. People would not want to use it for what we would have to charge the users for. Okay. So cost, reliability, management, so the village is able to change the prices as they see necessary, and also return on investment. I want to make sure that this is a break-even or money maker for the village. It cannot be a loss. And these are just some pictures of what those charges look like. Okay, the physical devices, the display and the user interface, that's very important. We want something that's easy to use. It's got to be something that somebody can just go up, look at it, touch a couple of points on the display screen, and get their charging unit started. Self-retracting cables. It's one of the things I've noticed as I've traveled around, the East Coast here anyway. If there's just a little hook for it, people don't put it back on. And then they end up getting driven on, broken, and they don't work. And then it costs money to repair those. So I was looking for self-retractors, like you see in some of the gas stations, where the hose is held up, you pull it out, it comes out, and then when you let it go, it goes back up inside. ADA compliant. We can't have a screen up here or a place where the folks can't get to it, so it had to be ADA compliant. And durability. These things are going to get banged around a little bit. And we're going to put some bollards in front of it to make sure nobody hits it. But just in case, I wanted to make sure we had nice solid units. Oh, sorry. Okay, software. I wanted open source. Now, what does that mean? Open source just means that when you buy the hardware, some people, such as other companies, you must buy their software. And if they decide to change the price of their software or not give you the flexibility that you want, you're stuck. You can't use anything else on their platform. All the ones that I've selected are open source. So if we go down the road and we don't like the software we have anymore, or they raise the price on us, we can move right over to another software vendor and keep the price down and manage it. The billing rate management, as well as payment to the village. The ability to just log in and change the rates at any point in time by the village, and then also have a check electronically sent to the village treasury once a month, automatically. So we don't have to do a lot of accounting or anything. It's all done for us. Maintenance, preventive, as well as scheduled repairs, etc., and the costs on them. Right now, the ones that I've looked at, we can include 2 years of all that stuff within the grant, with a little bit of a buffer left in the grant, until we can get up and running and start making a profit off the actual users. And that profit is not really profit, because it's going to be used to continue the program. Okay, this is just a draft schedule. Notice the dates are all blank. That's because I don't know when we're going to get our money. As soon as we get our money, that durations of how long things take, and I'll just fill it out. Okay, we just talked about Mill Street, because that's what that first one, that's the green dot right here. And based on how well that works, if we can get that one up and running and everything is going smoothly, I propose that we look at Franny Reese and we look at the Village Hall. And then we had some discussions about 3 years ago with Patriots Park. It has since been sold to a new owner. I've not approached the new owner yet, but I do believe that's another prime location that we would want to have chargers at. So based on how Mill Street goes, I will then reach out to that new owner. Okay, any questions on that?
Yeah, I got a few.
So go ahead.
Are there going to be any signs in the village directing people to that station, like on East Main?
Well, right now, I'm only looking to put one right on East Main, on the corner of Mill and East Main, because what they have is these charging stations are all listed in a thing called PlugShare. It's an app on your phone, and it's listed on Google. It will be listed on Google Map as well as Apple Maps. So anybody who drives an electric vehicle can just look to them and go right to this location.
What about, there's going to be a 24-hour-a-day.
24/7, yes.
Did you take into consideration about snow removal?
Well, snow will have to be removed as normal, as if it was just a regular spot.
Okay.
Because however we clear the parking lots, we do the same thing, because none of this sits in the parking lot. It all sits off the parking lot.
Right. Did you check at location at night to see if it was lit up well enough?
Well, we do have a street light, like right above it, as well as the parking lot is lit up with those 2 domes,
Yeah.
LEDs, all around the parking lot. So yes, there's lighting there. And the unit itself will have illumination so you can see it. Not bright, but only for using it, not spotlights or anything. But it would be, the area that I have proposed has enough natural light around, not natural light, but street lights to keep it safe to use.
Good. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes. Yes, Neutral.
So when the electric space is put in, they have to follow the same time restrictions as regular spaces?
Well, one of the things about the electric things is, as I saw in the chart before, I said parking for electric vehicles while charging only. So what ends up happening is they pull into that spot, they connect to the charger, and the charger will start charging. If they did not do that, they just sat there. That's why I need a local law for the police to be able to say, hey, wait a minute, they're just sitting there, the cable's not on the car, I think they're just taking up a space. Then there's another way to also enforce that, and that is you plug the cable into the car, you start charging. What we can do as a village, we can charge what they call idling charges. And idling charging is once your car is done charging, you start getting billed for sitting there, even though you're not pulling anything. And they make it rather expensive. I can speak for Tesla. What Tesla will do is they give you a 15-minute grace period from the time your car's done charging until they start charging you $1 a minute to move your car. And then all you have to do is that once, and then you leave your car there overnight or something, and it's very expensive. And their cards and everything, their accounts are all filed, and the billing happens directly. There's no way they can stop that from happening. The best way they can stop that is take their car off the charger and move it.
The other thing would be, in Bain Park, it's permit parking, but they have to buy a permit to use that electric space.
At Bain Park?
Oh, sorry, not Bain Park, Freddie Reese Park.
Freddie Reese, we will have to talk about that, all the details, because that's got a different aura to it than Mill Street. Mill Street is just, let's do a model, let's make it, see if it works, etc. If it does, then we can address what's going on up there, because right now there are permits being issued, etc. And we'd have to talk about, does it make sense to even put it there, number one? And number two, if we did put it there, how do we work it around the permits and everything? But that's open questions that I've elected to kind of put on the back burner until we make sure that this works before we consider a second spot. Yes?
You may not be able to answer this, but this may just be food for thought going forward. It's probably a contractual issue, I'm sure, but the village, the hydroelectric plant uses the village lake water to generate power.
Mhm.
Is there a way that that power plant can power these units to offset like a charge from Central Hudson or whatever, where the village will make more profit on it?
That's an excellent point. I'm not aware of how you can get direct power from the hydro plant to anything without going through Central Hudson.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I
That's a
don't
good
know, but
point.
it's just something maybe to look into down the road. And the other question I had is for the police department, moving forward, vehicles are starting to become more and more electric powered, and we're gonna get to the point where you're probably not gonna be able to get municipal vehicles that aren't.
Mhm.
So planning down the road, I think we're gonna need to plan to put charging stations for police vehicles in the police department.
Absolutely, I agree. This focus here is just more, because we're using a grant, it has to be open to the public. So we wouldn't want the public going into the police department area to charge their cars. That would be more of a municipal infrastructure, but that's a good point. I'm sure there's some other grants that we can ask the grant writer to take a look at to see that focus specifically on that. If you go back to the climate work that I was just talking about, the number 2 item there is the vehicle greenhouse gases. And that's an excellent way for us to address that and use that to help us get a grant to have charging stations put in at the police station. So I'm going to take a second note on that as well, because I think that's very important. Thank you. Okay, good. Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Other questions?
I have a quick question.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
You considering a maintenance contract with these for?
Yes, we are. Absolutely, and it's included in the cost analysis that I'm doing. Right now, I'm coming in under the CLIP level for 2 years. And then as we progress through those 2 years, we should start building up some funding to pay for the next year, build up funding to pay for the next year, and so on. But yes, no, absolutely, have to have maintenance and software costs. Other questions? No? Okay. Okay, Bain Park. This is, we received a HUD grant back in 2020 to put to help develop a park, Bain Park, on the corner of Lower Henry and Clapp Avenue there. And you can see it already. It's a nice grassy, clean cut grassed area with the marker, the monument marker there. So, unfortunately, the grant is expected to expire at the end of this year. So to help circumvent that, we actually met with the county back on the 14th of this month and asked them if we can make an extension until June 30th of next year. There's actually 2 grants that we're using. And we were able to get we were able to submit for those extensions and get signed off by the county. And if they do, then we'll be able to proceed. If we don't get the extension, then quite honestly, we're not going to be able to do this project because we need to get into next year because with the construction season ending shortly, we're going to need to have that. We do have as you know, our former engineering firm is no longer part of the village. So we needed a quick firm that was familiar with the grants and that. So we went with this Burma Engineering, and they're redrafting the bid. We should have that hopefully in the next couple of days. And I just completed a inventory of all the shipped packages and everything that they shipped us 3 years ago, and everything is there. So
Accounted for.
there was one part I had to find. I found it this morning. Okay, this is a more detailed schedule of what's happening. For that, I don't think you will go through all that, but you have it for your reference. It talks about how we can get it all done by the time I go to the post. Okay, zoning code update. Now here's where I'll go any way you guys and gals want to go, but there's a little bit of detail here. This is the summary of the changes that have been made to the zoning code. If you'd like me to step through all 20-some items, I'll be more than happy to do that. If you'd like me just to kind of give a high-level once over, and then if you have a question, I can drill down into that. Okay. First of all, we have a new chapter called escrow. Right now, in our laws, we don't have anything requiring anybody to give us an escrow, so we want to clean that up. We also have the fees. Right now, the fees are part of the zoning code, which means if we ever want to change our fees for anything, we have to enact a new law. So this is going to change that. This is going to point to another document so that when the village decides to change their fees, they can just change that document instead of having to change the entire law of zoning. Okay. We now have addressed food trucks. In the past, we didn't have anything in our code yet. We talked about them. That's now in there. We also have changed our terminology. So from house trailers to mobile homes, that's no longer the right phraseology. It's now manufactured homes, and the documents have been updated accordingly. We had some inconsistencies, and you'll see that a few different places that we go through here, that either the planning board found, or the code enforcement officer found, that in one part of the code it said do this, another part of the code it said do that. We went through and we tried to clean all those inconsistencies up. We also added an item for short-term rentals. We had nothing in our code, we currently have nothing in our code that talks about short-term rentals, Airbnbs, BBROs, and things like that. We also made the code a little more user-friendly. We actually have sections in there that are a little clearer. We have a lot more pictures. The document is much larger now, 270 some pages, and it's very data intensive. But with those visuals, it helps understanding a little better. Again, inconsistencies. We revised the zoning map. The zoning map had a number of changes that we had in there. First one off here was the Wendlass Terrace area. That was zoned like commercial Route 9. At any point in time, somebody could have taken one of those houses in Wendlass Terrace and put a McDonald's or something in there per code, and would have been allowed. So we're trying to correct that. Also, we made the Bleachery its own district. The reason for that, it was also zoned exactly the same as Route 9, which is not exactly what we want in the Bleachery because of its historic nature. So now we have another district where we can keep an eye on the historic value of Bleachery while allowing Route 9 to continue to stay its commercial path. Let's see. Yeah, talked about that. We have transition areas now because if you go down East Main Street from Route 9 to the center of the village, in the past it was commercial to residential, right up against each other. So what we've done is we've rezoned, or proposed to rezone the section in between to make it village residential, which has more of a softer change from the commercial to the residential. Let's see, we have added a new aquifer well protection overlay. We have our wells. We should be doing something in our code to outline the critical areas that we need to watch. Okay, let's see, we added purposes to zoning districts. So a lot of times people say, well, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Well, you can now go into the code and look up what's the purpose of the CMU, what's the commercial section, what's the village residential, what the purposes are, and what the intention is from the village for those areas. We also added, provisions for short-term rentals, live work, the cannabis dispensaries, things that we didn't have in our code before. Now we have them, or will have them. Okay, we also had dimensional standards we needed to change. That we had multiple variances over the years. For example, like in the residential areas, especially during COVID, we saw this a lot. Somebody would say, hey, I want to put a pool in my backyard. Well, sorry, you can't put the pool in your backyard because that's too much lot coverage. So, because on some small lots, that would be over and exceeding the required percentage of about 30%. So now what we've done is we've enhanced the lot coverage in the across the board for the residential areas to allow for putting a pool in, adding a deck, things like that. Let's see. Okay, new articles on special permits. In other words, when you need a special permit, we just give a little more detail as to why you need it. We also included building designs and initial standards so people can understand what we're looking for. We have some parking, landscaping, lighting references. They used to be in different parts of the code. We put them all together now because it's typically what you use when you're going to do a parking lot or something. We did revise some of the parking requirements. We exempted structures that were built prior to 1965. The original code was enacted in 1964. So now if you have a building that was built before 1965, we don't enforce today's parking standards on that building. Okay, let's see what else we got here. I don't want to put anybody to sleep here. We had some typographical errors. We changed some of the codes. And then, let's see. I'm skipping some spots here unless you want me to hit everything, just because it's taking a lot of time. We've added requirements for bicycle racks in on some of the developments. We put electric vehicle charging standards in there. So if you're putting a big parking lot in, parking complex, etc., you're now required to put electric vehicle charging in at the time of development. Okay, we have outdoor lighting standards. We had to change them. They were all based on the old incandescent lights. Everything's going to LEDs, which are rated in nits, not watts, and as such, so we need to update the code to go with the technology. Let's see. We also, in our sign section, because of a 2015 Supreme Court ruling, we had to remove any references to the content of a sign. We can no longer say anything about what an individual wants to write on their sign. That's a First Amendment right, so we can't do that, so we had to take that out of our code. When we did that, we had to then redefine how we measure the sign area, because it's a little bit different than it would have been if we were able to actually take into effect what was written. Okay, some more inconsistencies. We updated the historic overlay a little cleaner, so it wasn't like going halfway across properties, etc. We've actually followed property lines and streetscapes, etc. to do that. Okay. Last couple of things here. Non-conforming use sections. One of the things we did for non-conforming use was that if you had a parcel that was, say, built too close to your property line, in the past, the only thing you could do to that property was to bring it into conformance. In other words, move the building. So what we've done now is we've updated the code to say that as long as you don't increase the non-conformity, you can then do things in that building. So you don't have to move the building, but you can't you can't expand it or anything in the direction of the nonconformity. And then we had to take care of some legal stuff from the standpoint that basically states that if any portion of the document is found to be inconsistent or in error, it does not affect the rest of the entire document. And then we had that was the original. Then we had a meeting on the 20th with the Legislators Committee, and Michael, you correct me if I captured any of these wrong, but what we did was we had 6 more items here, and what we did was in allowed use, what we're going to do is actually, if it's an allowed use, and it doesn't require signage, and it doesn't require a grease trap, then you don't have to go to the planning board anymore. If it's allowed use and you're within compliance, you're good. You don't have to do that. So that saves a step for a lot of developers as well as us. Self-storage in the bleachery, originally it was only for reuse of the buildings, but we're changing that to allow new build as long as the building's architectural types follow the theme of the bleachery. Also, we have farm market duration. Originally, the proposed code said 10 hours. The team felt that 16 hours is more appropriate, 2 8-hour days per week for farm markets. Garage sale signage, right now you're only allowed to have 1 sign. Well, that doesn't work very well because we all know that anybody who has a garage sale puts 1 on their lawn, 1 down that street, 1 down that street. So what we ended up doing was changing the code to allow 3 signs. You can put them anywhere you want. It can't be, each one cannot be bigger than 2 by 3. They can't go up before 7 days before your event, and they must be taken down within 48 hours at the end of the event.
I thought we did 24.
You did?
48.
Okay, my mistake. That's what I said. I need your guidance here.
Yeah.
Okay, so
The
20
changes aren't made. That's going to be on everybody's desk within the end of the week. Just spoke with Lisa Khan today.
Okay, so 24 hours is
Did
what
we
you said?
want to do 48? I was under the impression it was 24 by committee.
No, afterwards, I thought we put 48, but if you want,
Strike that.
Well,
48.
check your
We'll go
notes.
with your memory.
I like 24.
Yeah, I have it as 24, but
I like 24 too, but according to my notes from our conversation, it wasn't 24. So you check yours. You have the official, you'll see on the next chart, it says, I need the official minutes before we can confirm this last part of it. Okay, short-term rental unhosted.
he said 20.
We redefined that because that wasn't defined in there. You must have a representative available 24/7, and they must be within a 20-mile radius so they can get to the property if something happens. 4-story buildings, and we have changed that. The proposed code didn't allow them on East Main Street, but we have some on East Main Street already. We have some that used to be there. The original Goring Hall was 4 stories. So we said, well, okay, well, let's go from Spring Street on East Main. Let's go up to School Street, up on West Main, and 4 stories could be allowed in there as long as the architectural theme is considered. Okay. Also, on the east side of the village, from Marshall Road east to the village line, which all, by the way, we already have a 4-story building there, Riverbend 2. So I want to make sure we didn't put that one into non-compliance just by changing the code. And then when you go out on the other end of the village to the west side, and what we're looking at is from Oak Tree Gardens, inclusive of Oak Tree Gardens, to the west property line. And then the bleacher itself, because it already has it. So. Okay, so those are all the changes that we're looking at for the code. This here for your reference, and I don't want to give anybody an eye chart tonight, but the map on the upper left, that's the one that's in effect today. The one on the right is the proposed new one. So please feel free to take a package, look at it, or better yet, in a minute here I'll tell you, where you can get it and you can look at it online if you like. But this is just some of the steps we had. The comprehensive plan was adopted on the 8th of March. We're required by law to make sure that our zoning code is adopted with the adopted comprehensive plan. They need to be aligned. March 31st, we got the zoning code we proposed was sent to Dutchess County. They gave us our comments back. They did ask for a 30-day extension only because it was so lengthy. We did give them that. July 19th, a copy of the new zoning code was sent to the village board, and that's been going through the process. And then the legislative committee, as I said here, we're waiting the official minutes from the zoning code document before I make the zoning code document updates. And that's what you saw Michael and I just chat about. And for those who want to pull the actual code down itself, you can do it from the village website. You'll notice that there's part 1, 2, 3, and 4. The document is very large. So just pull down, you can pull down all of it, it fits on your computer. So that's all up there, as well as the proposed zoning map, in case you'd like to look at it digitally versus hard copy. Okay. Now, this last part should be pretty quick, so hopefully, any questions on that before I move on? Yes, sir.
There was just a couple things that I added down.
Yep.
The part we talked about the parking areas private, and you said that they wouldn't have to follow the code.
Well, no, I didn't say you have to follow the code. What we have is, for example, if you have a building on Main Street somewhere, the building was built before 1965. You currently had a retail on the first floor and 2 apartments. I'm picking that out of the air. Now you want to extend and build another apartment. Or you want to carve it up to create another apartment, etc. You are grandfathered in for the retail and the 2 apartments that existed there. Any changes that you make to it that require additional parking, you now have to address just the change portion. You don't have to readdress everything. So for like in downtown and that, you saw there's some street parking. We've already used that example for RBAC when they were coming in. And we also used a thing called land banking for RBAC. So in the event that their parking from across the street on South Mizzier goes away for any reason, we have a spot reserved on their property that would be turned into a parking lot. So we're doing land banking as well. And so discussion on a proposed development on the west side of the village where we're talking about land banking some parking spots too, because as the direction is changing, a lot of people are working from home, they're not traveling as much, etc. We're seeing a decrease in individual vehicle ownership. Not a dramatic one, but some. So we want to make sure that we're not over parking lotting places, but we're reserving the ability that if for some reason we made a bad error, and for some reason there's actually that many more cars than we need to, then the developer would be required to take that section that was reserved and put the parking in. Did that get it for you?
That is very good, thanks.
Okay. Let's get this last part here and then I'll shut up. Okay, I've been working to do transition of the paper copies of everything in the building department and trying to get them all to digital. So it's really so we can enhance the administrative workings of the building planning and zoning office. There's too much paper right now, and we got to really kind of cut that down. So the process that I've been going through is manually pull the files, check for staples, double-sided, art-sized papers, carbon copies, and I scan them all. Scan them all into the system and save them to the local server as well as Municity. So you can search on those things if you need to find any documents. And Municity is really good because it's done by text grid for an address. So you go there and you can find all the documents. Well, you will find all the documents that the village had hard copy assigned to that property. So if you ever need to sort for something, you can sort for it and find it. So far, I've done 168 parcels, about 12,000 pages, and been doing it for 11 days, and I'm going to be doing it for many more because I'm only on a little more than 1 file cabinet of the 9 file cabinets in the drawer room up there. So I've got a big project in the future, but the benefits to the village: we get rid of eliminate the hard copy storage, we improve sorting and searching capabilities, we have data stored in 2 separate servers in 2 different locations. So if everybody's familiar with disaster recovery, we're covered. We've got the data in our server here, we've got the data in the county. So if one or the other were to not be here anymore, we still have our backup, and we're still good to keep moving. And then what I'm really trying to do is get us to a process where we can get away from having to sign everything on paper, so that people can go online, fill out a application, etc., sign it with something like DocuSign electronically. It automatically goes right into the code enforcement officer. Electronically, they sign it, and we're done. No paper ever comes in, and that file electronically gets assigned to the appropriate address and tax number. Okay. So I got many more months of scanning to do. Okay, any questions on anything that I talked about, that is? No? All right.
For your time.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chairman Morris, thank you for such a staggering amount of hard work that you've done for the village, going above and beyond any and all expectation presented. Yes. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. It's my pleasure to be doing this.
Thank you, Tom.
When you going to Florida?
Yeah, not
Not soon enough.
Not for a few more months.
I'd like the board to draw the attention to the handout. What I'm doing now is I'm putting a red piece of paper in between the issues, so it makes it easier to find them. All right. The grease trap approval for day and night has been moved to the October 11th agenda. They're not prepared at this point. You recall at the last meeting, we had a person in here from Doyle Security talking about the security system at the Mizzier Homestead. He gave a couple options. We also had him give us an option on the cameras. At the moment, or today, I met with the treasurer and went over the options for the alarm. We came, and if you look at the handout, and you probably still have it from the last time, you may recall he had an option 1 that looked okay, but it's just to monitor. It wasn't to fix anything. Then you had option 2 where you could go over and you could purchase the equipment and everything, and they would replace all the sensors and all the smoke detectors and all of that stuff. And that was pretty expensive. That was $5,000 plus $37.99 a month for monitoring. And then if you wanted a service contract, it would be another $74 a month. The option that Lori and I really focused in on was the 60-month term. That's a lease. It's an installation fee of $730, and there's a monthly fee of $169, but what it includes is all of the above. You get all the sensors changed, new, smoke detectors all new. You get the service contract with it. You get the annual inspection with it. It's called the Doyle Advantage, page 2 of 3 on that. So Lori and I were pretty much focused on that. What I would like the Finance Committee to do is be prepared on October 11th to point out what option you think you feel the best with, and then I would ask the board to accept one of those options at that meeting. Part 2 of that meeting last 2 weeks ago was the cameras in the park. Lori and I didn't get to talk much about that today, but I will in the next couple of weeks. Purchase price for all the cameras that he talked about, $9,346. And there was a CCTV quality assurance program that came along, and that was lifetime repair, and that was an additional $85 a month. They also had the 60-month Doyle Advantage, which is $1,303 due in full right up front. You get all the cameras for $1,300, and the fee would be $217 a month. I think that's the way I would do it, rather than buy them for the $9,346. Then you own them, but if you take the lease advantage at the end of the 5-year period, technology has changed. You still have your cameras, and you'll have an option to maybe upgrade at that point. So I'd like you to think about the Doyle Advantage plan for that too. But again, I haven't spent much time with the treasurer to see where the funding is. I know the funding is there right now for the Doyle Advantage for the cameras, and it's there for the sensors, smoke detectors. If you decide to take that Doyle Advantage spread over a 5-year period. It's like leasing a car, really. It's very similar. So that's where I am with that program. Any questions about that?
I do have one question for you, John. Is this a vendor that we use already?
Yes.
In that area, and that's why?
That's why we
recommending-
picked Doyle, because I understand that the financial committee or financial folks want to try to get everything under the same supplier,
Okay.
which makes sense.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yep,
That's what I thought.
thank you. Any other questions about the security for the homestead? Paul, I'd like you to stay a little bit after the meeting. I got to ask you a question about that. Next on the agenda is the mayor approval to interview a part-time typist in the water department. Don't be confused by the word typist. That's a water clerk too. Commonly referred to as a water clerk.
Yes, we already have a water clerk. So what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to put a person upstairs that can work with the water and sewer and garbage department, work with the finance department, and just be an all-around person upstairs at part-time. I'd like to have the board think about this, sit down, have a meeting with the personnel committee, discuss it with yourselves, and come back to our next meeting, if you could.
Yes, of course,
All right.
Mayor,
You understand what I'm saying?
yes.
Mayor, I have what appears to be two different agendas. The agenda that I have, there is void of. There's at least 6 different items that are on the agenda I was handed tonight. I don't know when this agenda was posted or if it was ever posted, but I only have an agenda that doesn't have, like I said, there's 6 different items that are not on this agenda. So this happens to be one of those issues. So I don't know when this was actually.
I'm not looking for approval tonight.
Understood, but there's 4, looks like 4 motions right now too.
Well, yeah, I understand. Well, this is a discussion meeting, and I'm not looking for approval. That's why I said if this board can think about it for 2 weeks of what I'm looking for.
And that's fine,
It was just written wrong.
but these items should be on the agenda. I don't know, I may not have gotten the agenda.
No, this is the same, Jim.
I left one on your desk right there.
There you go.
Yeah, but that's not what I was emailed. So.
Oh, no, if you want me to email you an agenda every time it changes up to about an hour before this meeting.
Well, that's a problem. The agenda, there has to be a cutoff date for the amendment of these.
Yeah, we know that. We've
Yeah.
tried that 100 times. It'll last for about maybe 1 meeting.
Well, it's a
That's
violation.
why we gotta be
of
flexible.
law to do so. So I'm just going on record saying that these types of items, there has to be a cutoff.
Well, that's not going to happen. So what I'll do is every time I change the agenda, I'll send it out to everybody.
So this meeting is a discussion meeting, not a voting meeting. So I mean, we don't need resolutions at this meeting. We shouldn't be voting at this meeting. This meeting should be discuss it, then bring it back to the business meeting, and that's where we do our voting and everything.
Agreed. But discussion items, action items, they should all be on the agenda so the public knows what is being discussed, what's being presented, so they can show up if they want to. So then when I see, like I said, I don't know if this was published or not. I don't know. I only have what was provided to me. So I'm just raising the issue. This could
All
be
right.
published before, I don't know. But
All right.
these are
I
items that
I
I'm
can fix
unaware of.
that. Every time it changes, I'll send it out. As a matter of fact, I got a resolution just before the meeting tonight. So let's not vote on that.
Well, those items should not be voted on. They should be put to the next meeting.
Discussion, yes, correct.
All right,
They should be put to the next meeting.
the police commissioner resolution, I'll move to October 11th.
Correct.
I called you on Monday regarding that, to have that added to the agenda. We had a discussion on Monday. So it wasn't it's in your packet
That
here.
item was probably on the original one. I don't recall.
Not on the original one that I was sent.
It doesn't say anything about appointing a police commissioner?
No. So,
So we can wait till 2 weeks on that one.
yes, yes.
Yes. Discussion tonight. Discussion only tonight.
Good point. That does seem kind of.
Okay.
Excuse me?
Well, it says resolution appointing a police commissioner.
We're not appointing one, we have.
We have one. So what's going on with that?
So what we didn't have was we didn't have the resolution. So all we were doing tonight is Brooke, we voted. There was a resolution that was read the night of the hire, but we don't have an actual physical one. So we're just voting that in to record
Got it. So
It's in the handout.
Yes.
in the packet.
Move that to October 11th.
yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds like a good idea.
All right, I'll move that to October 11th.
Yep.
Discussion local laws, trustee Ruffin.
Oh, we got the fire vehicle first.
Skipped one.
Oh, sorry, wait.
So, fire chief has been in contact with me. He's looking to get a new chief's vehicle. We talked about this in the past. He has an interested party, but we have to go out to surplus and put it out to bid and see who else would be interested into it. He's looking to sell his chief vehicle for $10,000 so he can take that money and purchase it towards the new vehicle. And the vehicle he's replacing is the 68 3 car that is white. The white car, not one of the red ones. So I guess he's looking for a direction to go in. So we can, if the board is interested in moving this along until October 11th meeting where we can do a resolution for this car. This car is only $41,000. I mean, I don't know which way the board wants to go, but I told him I'd bring it up tonight to get a final answer on this so we can get this settled. Okay, so is the board interested in moving this process along? That's what I'm bringing up. If not, please let me know tonight and we can put a stop to this. Moving on, whatever you want to do. But we need to do something for this car, for this person.
Can I just ask a question? Is there a new vehicle in the budget for the fire department?
There's a line for a new vehicle in the budget,
And there's money in there for it?
a payment. The way I take it, so he wants to sell a vehicle and make 2 more payments.
But you said it's in the line to get the.
There's a line item in the budget for a vehicle, correct?
So they can get the car?
Now, so
I don't understand.
There's just a line item in there. I'm just looking to make it what are we doing with it?
So
Money in the budget?
No.
to-
actually, the budget, our fire budget is grossly underfunded this year.
Why?
Because that's the budget we received from the fire chief. That's the budget we received from the fire chief.
Yeah.
We actually added it to his budget, added money to his budget. So the board has been provided with the current state of the fire budget. All I'm going to say at this point is you make your decision. You make your own decision. I have provided information that has been asked for on several occasions, and I'm not providing it again. So
What does that mean? Provide information to get the car or to get the car?
What the current state of the budget is.
So they can't afford to get the car. In other words, they can't afford.
Can I talk about this?
This is one of those items that was added to the agenda. So
This information has been
I'm
given to
just
the
hearing
fire
this now,
committee
so-
from the finance committee about the current budget that we have in our firehouse. And it was our opinion that a car should not be purchased this year. And that's, and it's just, it keeps going on and on and on and on and on. We are projecting a shortfall in our fire budget of approximately $80,000.
That's scary.
It's very scary.
It's very scary.
So is it the right time to obtain a new vehicle from a vehicle that's currently running? I don't know the answer to that. I'm just providing the information. The rest of the board can make the decision.
Yep.
Okay? I'm not going to be the bad guy on this one. The information is here. It just keeps coming up like a bad penny. If you want to make a decision to get the truck, then by all means, make the decision to get the truck. The treasurer and the finance committee have provided the information. Make your decision based off of that. Is the car that he's got right now still running? I'm assuming yes. Is it an emergency situation? So I don't want to talk about this anymore. The information has been provided. Make a decision.
That's what I'm
That's all I have to say about it.
What's the board's
I
decision on
have
this?
much bigger things to concentrate my
Well,
time.
yeah, if we're $80,000 short, that's scary.
That's an approximate.
I
Sure,
think
Tom.
one of the issues that needs to be determined is whether or not whether or not there is sufficient money in the budget in order to even authorize the purchase. So if there's a line item with a certain amount of money in it, I don't know what that is. The cost of the vehicle, I don't know what that is. If he's raising money by selling other vehicles, I don't know what that means. All of this information we would need to know to figure out how we can proceed. But if there's not sufficient money in the budget, then the board wouldn't even be at liberty to authorize the purchase. So
So Ian, would you recommend that we line item all the things you just talked about to look at?
again, if you want, if you want legal counsel involved with it, you need to provide me with the information so I understand what's happening. I mean, I can't opine on issues when I have zero factual background for it.
So that
So,
will line item.
so yeah, whatever the items are, that would be very, very helpful. However, they're purchasing it to make sure it's in compliance with the procurement policies. There's a number of different things that should be discussed before we start authorizing expenditures of money.
Well, what's scary too is, God forbid, with the 2 fire departments, they go to the gas station to get gas, and they don't have the money to fill these trucks up with.
I'm just bringing it up as the fire
I
chief.
would say that you need
Fire
to be
chief reached
worried
out. I'm just bringing it up. It's up to the board. Yeah.
that the fire chief goes to fill the car with gas and then it doesn't start on his way to a fire call. That would be alarming if we didn't take a look at there's a matrix chart about how old a vehicle is and when it should be taken out of service. And then there's also a cost this year on low bid for said vehicle. And next year's bid might be $20,000 more. It might cost the village $20,000 more to replace a vehicle next year or the following year than this year. But Trustee Nicholas is on the fire committee.
All those numbers.
He'll itemize that for us. If he says he'll do it, he'll do it. He's the man.
And if we're looking to sell a vehicle that is a surplus vehicle, then it needs to be declared a surplus, and there should be, I'm going to need information on that vehicle as well. Model, date, mileage, et cetera. But you can call me and we can talk about the details of that.
We'll do that, Ian. Understood.
All right. So we're going to skip over resolution number 5423
Yep.
of last year, 2022. Okay. And yes, you heard that right.
So why are we, I gotta be
You get them
honest,
the way I get them.
I gotta be honest with you, why are we skipping over that?
Because we're not
Because it
voting
wasn't
on
on the
anything tonight.
original?
We're not voting on anything tonight.
Okay, gotcha.
Like, these things
I got it,
need
no.
to be posted in advance so the
No, no,
public
no.
has an opportunity to see them and come and comment if they so choose.
Gotcha.
But if it's going in the last minute, or I don't know when this
No,
went
I
in, so
understand.
that's a problem. It's a violation of the law.
I don't know, can we have this discussion about local laws?
Yes, coming now. Okay. So myself and Attorney Linders and myself headed the legislative committee. And again, everybody heard from Chairman Morris, Chairman of the Planning Board, that he's working on new zoning codes and he's in charge of climate action planning. In the interest of forward thinking and the climate action planning, one thing that Chairman Morris talked about tonight was electric vehicle parking regulations for charging stations, especially on the municipal lots. That would be under the jurisdiction of New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law, Section 1202. In order to make a public local law for that, I would need, as the legislative committee, of which I'm the head of, would need to consult with Ian Linders, which would then result in charges. I need
Not criminal charge.
not criminal charges, money charges, people. Money. We need money. So again, Attorney Linders and myself had a conversation about approving a set amount of time to work on that law, as well as a law adopting a current fee schedule regarding parking fees that Commissioner Italiano and myself had spoken about. We were looking at Commissioner Italiano had brought to the legislative committee a parking fee schedule from Brewster. The current fee schedule that we have was put in place more than 2 decades ago. It's pretty antiquated. I'm sure everybody would enjoy getting a $40 or $50, parking fine for parking in front of a fire hydrant, but that's not really consistent with other municipalities at that point. So we're looking at changing that. We're also looking at rewriting Section 64-8A of Village Code. That's for the building department. That code governs guidelines for service orders. Okay, what's a service order, you might ask? No problem. A service order is essentially a stop order for starting work without proper permitting. The way that the code is written, that like we've heard in the news of people pulling in wrong driveways and getting shot and things like that. All right, this section of the code we have to take a look at because it requires putting our building department in the way of possible harm, where he has to go and post something rather than send certified letters. We don't know the legality of it yet, but we have to do some research on it. Again, I don't want to put any village employee at risk, okay? And especially since things are getting weird in recent times, we don't need to be in the paper for any shootings or things like this or intrusions, okay? So like a certified letter, that might do it. There's one thing we're looking at is parking. The legislative committee, is looking at is parking regulations, designating drop-off areas in front of daycares during business hours, so that you have a designated drop-off area for students or young ones going to a daycare, all right, to leave that spot open, maybe a 15-minute drop-off area. The other thing that we need Ian's time for is to considering the way that electronic filing and electronic document requests are progressing into this century, is a resolution to partner with Carfax to basically provide accident reports in a timely manner, where people, rather than being bottlenecked, making a request to our police department, can then just go online, go on Carfax, get their accident report in like 2 minutes and be done with it. So this would help the village, but there's a fee schedule or a contract that needs to be put in place with that. Does that make sense, everybody? Do we have any questions on that? No? All right, so what the legislative committee is asking for is essentially money approved by the Board of Trustees for no more than 10 hours of the attorney's time to put these local laws together. I mean, I sit on the committee, I'm not an attorney. I don't think anybody here would appreciate me writing these local laws without an attorney. So I don't know if I
I don't
can.
think he needs approval, but he's here for us and he has to do the laws.
He had actually, Ian and I had interfaced, and he would be more comfortable. How do you want to say?
I think if the board authorizes or just aware that I'll be working on these, just so the board's in favor
Yeah.
of what we're doing is
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
The time allotment is to guess. It could be a
Correct.
lot less, could be more. I don't know what we're getting into.
Yeah.
So
All right.
What are the thoughts from the board? Do we need a motion for that? How would you like the legislative committee to proceed? Anybody?
Want to do a motion?
Can we do a motion?
I mean,
you can do you could formalize that in a motion that the board would authorize the attorney to work directly with the legislative committee.
Okay, I mean, I am on here for discussion. I'm not on here for a vote. And I'm on the old agenda as well.
No, this
So-
was an issue to be discussed. So
Yes.
it's
So I am on the agenda, everybody. Anybody? Don't all volunteer. A motion authorizing the legislative committee 10 hours of general counsel's time.
I would. Yeah, I would. The board just needs to agree. We could do a formal motion.
Ian,
if
to
necessary.
deal with the local laws Mike just
It's
described.
considered a vote.
Yes, we need a money vote.
It's not a big.
Or nothing
You can
gets
do a motion to authorize council to work with the legislative committee as discussed. That's the motion.
Okay, I make a motion to authorize council to work with the legislative committee as discussed.
is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you all.
One last thing, Mike. In your list of local laws, did I mishear the zoning code? The revision of the zoning code, is that one of those local laws that Ian's being authorized to also work on so we can get resolution on that as quickly as possible?
I don't believe that you need that in this resolution because that's already proceeding.
Okay.
Okay? Yep, that's moving forward.
All right.
Discussion Parks Commission, Charlie Ferry.
We have our meeting tomorrow night. Our meetings are gonna be the Thursday following the second village board meeting.
You mean at the village, what do you mean, here or
Oh, we're gonna meet at the American Legion,
American Legion?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, all right.
Other than that, I don't have much because we're really just getting together. It's gonna be our first real meeting since.
Yeah. 7 o'clock tomorrow? I think I'll stop by.
7 o'clock tomorrow.
All right, cool.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Charlie.
Charlie.
Kenneth Cruzy reimbursement request, Attorney Youngworth. This was moved from the last meeting to this meeting. Do we want to move that to October? Or does somebody want to talk about it?
No, it was discussed in executive session.
Yeah,
What this was?
yes.
Okay, discussion bloodborne pathogens exposure control plan. That's in here. Now, this plan is very important for all the employees. I'm told the firehouses already have controls and they have plans in place.
Correct.
And Jason and I will be working together to make sure that our plan, which is the latest plan, is in fact the same as they have. There could be some differences. Jason and I will work that out. What I'm going to ask the board to do on October 11th is to approve a resolution that I received from Attorney Youngworth the other day. And I would like you to read this. You've had it now for a while. I emailed it to everyone. I'm not going to go through this in detail. There's an awful lot to it. But once you approve this plan on the 11th, I'll be able to put it in motion and get all the employees up to speed through training, offering up hepatitis vaccinations if they desire to have one. And if they don't, they can sign a waiver if they don't want it, and that will all be at the village expense, and get this plan in place. This is not unlike workplace violence or sexual harassment or any of the other mandatory plans that we have them, or classes we have them attend annually. This will be part of that package that I oversee every year for every employee. And there are several options on how they can get the training. They can go through our comp carrier and do it online. I can have a consultant come down from PERMA, that's our comp carrier, and do it in a classroom environment like this or over at the Legion Hall. Or they can all get together in one room like the highway guys, and I have a DVD. They can watch the DVD, and after that they can sign off on it. But at any rate, I will make sure that each and every employee, full-time, part-time, receive that training and sign off that they did receive it, and sign off whether they want the hepatitis B vaccination or not. That's the long and short of it. So if you look through this, you'll see the scope, the responsibilities of the safety coordinator, which there's quite a bit there, and I am the safety coordinator. There's exposures and controls, personal hygiene, engineering and work practice controls, personal protective equipment. I was very involved with that with COVID, making sure that you had masks, you had gloves if needed, we had plexiglass up, all of that falls on the safety manager. And by the way, the Village of Wappingers Falls got an award 2 years ago for being outstanding of all of their hundreds of municipalities that they have, to the extent they came down here and did a video of the team, and I have the award upstairs. My point is, we're very active on these things for our employees' safety. Board, do you have any questions on this?
Nope, good job, John.
That will be on the board to pass a resolution on the 11th of October. And I'll make sure it's on the agenda for everybody to see in advance. Any questions? Approval, grease trap, 2665 East Main Street. Todd Atkinson.
Good evening, Board. Todd Atkinson, village engineer. To discuss real quickly the approval of the grease trap at 2665 East Main. That was the old Eddie's Gourmet pizza shop. There was already an existing internal grease trap that needs to be upsized and rebuilt. The applicant, who's actually here tonight, Oliver, is looking to, has submitted the application, or not application, but submitted the documentation from the professional engineer. There are a couple concerns I have about it, nothing that's going to stop it from being approved, but he's seeking a waiver right now to allow the continued use of an internal grease trap within the building and not have to go outside onto Route 9W, or rock D, 9D, and dig through a rock and put in a new grease trap. So I don't see any issue with it. There's just a couple comments that I have, and I worked it out with the engineer today. So we'll have a new document coming in. I'm not sure if you can approve it tonight because it's not a voting meeting, but this would be an approval of a waiver that already currently existed under Eddie's Gourmet.
All right.
You have anything to say?
You don't,
Are you on any time constraints? If you
Are you
didn't,
on a time constraint right now to open, or are you?
At this moment, I'd like to be open for the 7th of October, the first Saturday event.
That would be a time constraint, yes.
I think you're going to have to make an exception here, Mayor.
Want to make an exception? Yep. Is the board looking to make an exception?
You're looking to waive a current law on the books?
There's a waiver process within the current code. It's already been granted for the previous restaurant that was there. This is a new restaurant going in. So they're just reapproving the waiver to allow the actual grease trap to be installed inside instead of outside below grade.
Okay.
So we're going to add to our 10 hours review and legislation for grease trap code and legislative committee. We'll talk about that at the next meeting, making that into the existing code for that
We
section.
have a lot of these throughout the village, just
Oh, yeah, we do.
remind you.
We do.
And
There's
there-
a lot of hard spots, in the village, especially along East Main Street, West Main Street, that are in rock.
So are you gonna give him approval?
So
We're
it
discussing.
sounds like there, if this is a common issue,
Common
It
issue.
is.
then
Yes.
it sounds like the law should be amended
Yeah.
to
The law,
reflect.
the law is actually on the books since 1988, and I think it still refers to the 1988 law for the
Yes.
actual grease traps.
Yep.
What it
Which
predated
is-
that? 88?
That's,
Okay.
yeah, there's been a couple variations since then.
But you're indicating that there's some waiver process to that? Because again, this is, I was.
It all has to do with like cleaning and stuff
Yeah,
like that, right?
I think, Mr. Card, you could tell me, I think we did the.
Nyan Church.
The Nyan
the
Church.
Methodist Church.
Norma's,
Norma's.
Norma's, Patsy's.
Patsy's,
We just did the Mediterranean restaurant.
the Mediterranean restaurant.
out,
So in the
out
last
in Depot.
year and a half, there's been at least 5 or 6 of them that have been approved to this board in that manner. And those were all, except for the church, I think all of them had existing internal grease traps,
Correct.
and they just basically kept them going with the new use that was being presented. This one's actually being upsized from what's currently there because it's not adequate.
Moving forward, Mr.
Again, for the
Atkinson.
record, I'm sorry, for the record, I have no knowledge of any of this information till just now. So as far as the board, I cannot give you an opinion on something that I've given the information of right now. I've not had an opportunity to read the code on these sections, so I can't verify, although I'm sure Mr. Atkinson is accurate. I can't opine on it.
I don't think he has to, does he? Can't you just vote?
Yeah, because you vote, right?
You just vote. We've done it before. It's a waiver process.
Yeah.
Mr. Atkinson, moving forward so we can change our laws, would your firm be able to provide the Village of Wappingers Falls with a professional letter or some insight as to, why we should change and update into this century?
Yeah, that's no issue.
And
at
then
all.
the proposed version of that grease trap code that you would recommend.
Well,
That way
was tabled
legislative
from last-
can get that done.
Yeah.
Our the work.
Well, they
no issue.
weren't prepared. They're
Yeah, they weren't
prepared
prepared.
tonight.
So we're tabled to.
It's been tabled already once.
Yeah, it's been tabled already. So the board
We
will
have a motion?
make a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I'll second it.
Joe? All in favor? Opposed? Okay.
Okay, the village treasurer has been working very hard to clean up a lot of stuff, and it's called housekeeping. It's moving funds around to different spots, different lines, and some of the projects that have been closed out for a long time, there's still funding around, and she's trying to get that all straightened out. What she and I are asking for tonight are to approve some of that housekeeping on 3 separate occasions, on 3 separate issues. A motion to acknowledge and approve the closure of the following capital projects: Franny Reese Park, the Clinton Dam project, and the boathouse. These capital projects have been completed and the projects can be closed. Any monies that could potentially be received by grant funding through reimbursements would be due to general savings as a way to satisfy the due to and the due from requirements and annual update document process. So I need a motion for that.
So this wasn't on the original agenda either. And now we're voting again. I'm just confused as to what we're going to vote on tonight that wasn't on the agenda. I'm a little confused.
I don't know. I don't know where this came from.
This came to me this afternoon.
I understand that. And it wasn't on the original agenda. And we're saying that we're not voting tonight, but we're voting. And we're
table
saying that we're not voting on things that weren't on the agenda, but we're doing some and not doing others. I'm slightly confused.
All right, let's do it this way. Let's change the word approval to discussion.
Why don't we
How's that?
just,
I'll put on there discussion, so next, on the 11th, you'll already have had your discussion.
It's fine.
yeah,
That's all. Table
that's
it.
fine. We'll table it till the 11th.
All right.
Well, you guys could have grabbed in January, in, so you know what's on it,
We get the agenda handed to us every meeting.
but it's different. According to all these people.
It's like we all have a different.
Well, we've been doing this for decades. This is all new.
Everybody got the
Last
same
3
agenda
months, everything, or 6 months, this is all new. Leo did it this way, I did it this way, over a half a century.
Right here, like this.
tonight. Does the board have anything?
Okay, can we have a,
Is there gonna be a discussion on these items?
On what?
They're moving funds out of Franny Reese Park and the boathouse and
no, they tabled it.
We tabled it.
the discussion, the vote, but not the
We
discussion.
can
We'll probably
discuss
do it at the end of next month. We can have discussion at the end of October, and then November they can do it.
Can we
You have a
allow?
discussion?
Can we
Because
allow?
I think
them
it's
to speak?
discussion, then you figure it out and vote the next one.
Yeah.
Is it?
The two things I was just concerned about is closing out Franny Reese Park and the boathouse. When they're not completed, there's still work, the boathouse isn't even opened yet, and there's issues that have to be
I
dealt.
think it has more to do with the grant.
Yeah.
It's more to do with the anything that goes further with these projects, they have to be done in our general account through our budgeted monies. So the grant procedures for these items are done with, therefore, we don't have to have a separate banking account for these items.
So they could be moved back into that park fund basically, or whatever.
Correct.
You just
Right.
move them
Right.
up, it's still there.
Right.
And it's the energy efficiency rating of the boathouse.
Needs a new roof with insulation on the roof.
That's, I'm not sure if you've heard that, but that's what's going on with the boathouse at this time.
The boathouse currently has a seasonal CO.
Correct.
The three
Three
seasons
season.
cannot be used during the winter because the heat cannot be turned on because of the energy efficiency. And during the summer, the AC cannot be used, but it can still be used as an actual CO.
What happened to all the work that was originally done?
It didn't.
Well, the work didn't get done. Didn't
Nope. Didn't get done.
The work did get done. The HVAC system is installed.
Yeah.
It's been tested. It was balanced.
It all works.
complete. It cannot be turned on because it doesn't meet the energy code.
Energy
of
code.
your
So we have to insulate the roof. So we have to put a new roof on the building.
I thought it had a new room. I'm so confused.
No. It needs a new roof.
How much is the new roof?
It needs a new roof. What's that?
How much is the roof?
We'd have to go out and,
Go out and get 3 bids.
yeah.
Prices.
We do have some soft estimates. We do have some estimates between 80,000 and 100. No, I'm sorry. Yeah.
$200,000.
$200,000.
That would require a formal bid.
But yes, that's proper procurement procedure
It's up
that we
more
don't
now.
have right now.
Yeah, right. Oh my God.
Yeah.
We're looking into state funding for that.
Okay, so
Anybody else?
I'm going to reschedule that to October 25th for a discussion. Will we need, no, you can't have it, you can vote on the 11th. Can you discuss too on the 11th?
Sure.
Yeah.
Is that allowed?
These are motions to transfer.
Discussion on 11th.
Okay.
Or 25th, you said.
Motion's
Discussion.
made,
And vote on 11th.
seconded, discussion, vote.
You can have the discussion on the 11th,
No,
and then you're going to vote again.
we're going to vote on the 11th.
It's going on the 11th agenda as a motion. Should go on as a formal resolution.
Yes,
Wait, I got to understand this. October 11th,
We're
you're
voting.
going to have a discussion.
No, we're voting on it.
No discussion.
No discussion. We're voting on it.
Oh, okay.
Discussion tonight.
Moving funds.
What do you vote on the 11th?
We're voting on it.
A motion to move
Housekeeping.
20,000, right, $555 is a
Now-
contractual
now-
obligation.
Okay, I'll put it down for a
Something
vote
like that, but that's-
for the 11th, for all 3 items.
It should be done
The
by
next
resolution.
question is, are we going to need a full-blown resolution for each one of these?
If you're transferring monies, you should do that by a resolution.
So we'll have a resolution for each one or for all 3 on one?
We will know by the next.
Yeah, I'll have to look, I mean, I'm reading it for the first time, so we can discuss that. We'll have them prepared.
Okay. That concludes the written, printed portion.
All right. Going in. Can I get a motion to go into executive session with our engineer, Todd Atkinson?
I'll make that motion.
If there's no more public comment,
All right.
second
I'm
that.
sorry.
Any,
Who seconded that?
of course, public comment?
Yeah, I got a public comment.
On which one?
Now, I brought it to Brian Murphy's attention. I had a rat, dead rat in the driveway next door to me. So I want to know what's going on with the vacant house there that he owns. I don't know if rats are running back. I've been there 55 years, never seen a rat. But I also hear you got rats in the dumpster here too.
This sounds like a job for our new deputy building inspector.
Yes. So I will talk to Brian tomorrow, and I can stop by your house, Mrs. Rogers.
Call Waverly, we'll get rid of them.
I think Waverly took care of it.
Rats, not two-legged ones.
Anybody else?
We got a motion on the floor, trustee Nesnick, to move into executive session. Can we have a second?
I second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I'm gonna have to get all the details to Ian on these.